Yeah, it's interesting when you have your mind preoccupied on something else, how it can trigger some of this flow state that you're talking about. Because for me personally, it's always felt best if I'm not thinking about business to come up with great ideas for business. If my mind is somewhere else, even just something as simple as listening to old music, watching an old movie that's like my favorite movie, I'll watch it and then I'll be like, oh man, I got this crazy idea for this new
It's
whatever the heck it might be.
So a lot of it is, especially with music, but same thing with movies. So I talked a second ago about dopamine, norepinephrine, heightening pattern recognition, right? So the ability to link ideas together. There's also a pattern insight trigger for flow. So when you link ideas together, right? You're watching an old movie, you see something familiar and it links to another thought in your head, right? And your brain, and especially if it's a movie you've seen a lot, your brain, which is always trying to predict what's going to happen next, you already know what's going to happen next. So there's got a little space on the side so it can look for those kind of more remote connections. And we also know, this is why favorite pieces of music and old movies tend to do this. So if you look in creativity, one of the things about creativity is anxiety blocks creativity. And one of the great secrets to creativity is a good mood promotes it. And the reason is anxiety is predominantly norepinephrine and cortisol, but the more norepinephrine in your system, the more logical and linear your brain wants to be, right? If you're in a big problem, crisis situation, you don't want choice paralysis, a million options. You want fight, freeze, or flee, right? That sort of thing. And we all know this, that in the, like, if, so you learn this the hard way in in the martial arts, right? Like what Mike Tyson meant when everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Like, that in a crisis situation, your brain stops being able to kind of tap dance and suddenly just, reacts. That happens. It's not just extreme anxiety. It's all levels of anxiety. So it's because the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the part of the brain that can find far-flung connections between ideas, the more norepinephrine in that circuit, the less far-flung connections it will find. So a good mood, it will go, oh, everything's cool in the world. I can look for far-flung connections from this idea that may help you find new resources or innovate or whatever. It's not a crisis situation. We have time. We have the luxury of time to solve this problem. And so when you watch an old movie, one, you don't have to predict what's happening next because and two, it puts you in a good mood, gets a little dopamine flowing, and as a result, you're starting to notice patterns. Same thing with music. Music is all about pattern recognition, right? One of the reasons music is our brain wants to predict what's going to happen next, and because music follows predictable patterns, we get little hits of dopamine every time we connect those patterns. It's why music can try to drop us into flow that way.
Yeah. Do you have any like pre-writing rituals that may or may not help you get into that flow state? I just know I love writing, and sometimes I will blink and then time will pass by and I'll have, a couple pages down. But I know listeners who are writers are kind of like, hey, this guy has, 12 books.
I do a whole course called Flow for Writers. We have a whole digital course that I put together on this because I really like training writers. So there's a lot of rituals. I'll talk about the most important ones as they pertain to writing, but these are all flow triggers that apply to everybody. It's not just writing. So this is obvious, but flow follows focus. So the most important flow trigger is complete concentration. And what that actually means is I start my day with about a 4-hour block of uninterrupted concentration. What the research shows in the beginning, 90 minutes is great. You want to sort of start your day or start your work session with 90 minutes of uninterrupted space for complete concentration. 90 minutes, just in the way that we sleep for 90-minute cycles. Well, there's a waking focus cycle that lasts about 90 minutes, or REM sleep is 90 minutes, and waking focus is 90 minutes. So it's a built-in biological block. We're sort of built to pay attention for that long. I always like to start my day with that and start my day with my writing because it's my hardest task. We know that willpower is highest first thing in the morning, right? Willpower tends to decline over time for a variety of reasons. Roy Baumeister's work on some of this, other people have added to it since then. I also always start my writing day by editing what I wrote the day before. So writing flow, one of the things that triggers flow are clear goals. So that's a daily to-do list. So I always write, start of a book, I'll write 500 words a day. In the middle of the book, it's 750. Towards the end, it's 1,000 as I get to know where I'm going. And I start by editing what I wrote the day before. And the reason is editing is predominantly about pattern recognition. As we know from the conversation, pattern recognition, when you notice, oh, this sentence gets so much better if I change this word out for this word, and there's more rhythm here if I connect this, right? That's pattern recognition. So you're getting little bits of dopamine, little bits of, and what it is doing is it's driving concentration, driving you closer to flow. So by the time I get to the dreaded blank page, I'm already a little bit in flow. My focus is at least up, and I've got a little bit of that stuff in my system. And now when I face the blank page, I'm not exactly neurobiologically starting from zero. So those things are really important. But I also, one of the most important things for writers is your brain has it does pattern recognition automatically, but it can't do it if it doesn't have starts and endings. So always know where you're starting from and always know where you're going. Your brain will automatically be able to fill in the middle, but a lot of writer's block is I don't know where I'm starting from and I don't know where I'm going. So when I say I have clear goals, I'm going to write 500 words today, right? And I always know where I'm starting from and where I'm ending, because it tends to prevent writer's block.
Yeah. And that 90 minutes that you spoke of, what are you trying to achieve there? And is it like a meditation thing, or are you just
No, I mean, in those 90 minutes for uninterrupted concentration, I'm writing. That's when I'm writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my writing time, but it's you want flow to maximize flow. It doesn't really, if you're giving yourself 15 minutes to drop, it usually takes about 15 minutes to drop into flow kind of thing, even if you're really good at your craft kind of thing, and if not longer. So you want that long block to give yourself time to shift into the state.